the meeting started.
Perfect. Thank you, Donna. I'm not sure if everyone can see me because we're all probably have it set up, the screen set up a little bit differently depending on the device we're on. But for those who don't know me, my name is Corey Moore and I work for the Township of Muskoka Lakes. I do communications and economic development. Just to touch on, we also have David Pink on the call. David is the Director of Development Services and Environmental Sustainability. So he can also help assist with any questions if there are any. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, particularly because it's so beautiful out and we are inside looking at a screen. So thank you for taking the time today. Just to give a short background of how we got to where we are today. About a year ago, we worked with our Economic Development Advisory Committee on updating our economic development strategy. And downtown enhancement was identified as a high priority in that to help develop the growth of the local economy. So with that, we applied for some funding and received a grant from the province to help develop community improvement plans for Bala and Port Carling. Donna has a presentation prepared for today to help kick things off, and she'll definitely go into more detail. But just to give a high-level overview of what we hope to get out of the CIP, the CIP itself is going to help the township identify project areas for revitalization to help us direct future investments in a more strategic manner versus just an ad hoc approach. Early in the new year, we were able to retain the planning partnership as a consultant to help develop the plans for us. And with that, Donna Hind, presenting today, is the project manager. And I'll turn it over to you, Donna, to lead us through the presentation and then have a good conversation on some ideas for Port Carling.
Okay, thank you very much, Corey. Yes, my name is Donna Hind, and as Corey said, I'm managing the community improvement plans for Bala and Port Carling. On the call is my colleague, Robin Chubb, who's an associate at the Planning Partnership, a landscape architect and an urban designer, and Lauren Millier, who asked you to turn your camera and your mic on, Lauren, and just let everyone know your role on the project. Thanks.
Excuse me. Hi, everyone. As Donna said, my name is Lauren Millier. I'm a partner with the firm MDB Insight. I have a background in economic development and strategic planning, and we're here to support the planning partnership and the municipality to scope out the type of CIP program and the range of grants that might be helpful to move the local economy forward.
Thanks, Lauren. So we do have a presentation. It's probably about 15 or 20 minutes. I'm going to go through the whole thing, and then we'll pause and we'll make sure we hear from absolutely everybody that's on the call. I think we have set aside until 4:30. Everybody can see my screen that I'm sharing. Corey, just a thumbs up if you can see it. Yeah, okay, great. So first is Corey, and Corey already introduced what a community improvement plan is. It's a strategic community investment tool. It sets priorities. It's one of a whole bundle of planning tools out there to manage growth and direct development in urban areas. There's two bundles of projects we're going to be looking at. One bundle is anything to do with streets, publicly owned land, parks, open spaces. Will identify opportunities for improvement. Those are municipal initiatives. The other bundle, as Corey said, is anything to do with the private sector. We're going to be identifying incentive programs, grants, loans, tax relief, anything that encourages revitalization, redevelopment, development of new businesses in Port Carling and Bala. We are making sure that we're doing this within the context of other work that's underway. Probably everybody on the call knows the official plan is under review. Corey made mention of the economic development strategy, the strategic plan. We're reviewing a Parks Master Plan, we're reviewing the asset management plan, the zoning bylaw, and we do know that there's a feasibility study underway for the museum right now, and we're good friends and close colleagues of the consultants that are doing that work, which is TCI Management Consultants. This is the schedule that we're doing the community improvement plan. So we started the beginning of this year. We're going to wrap up by the early fall of this year. So we are here at our first big consultation event. But to get to this red box, we've had one-on-one conversations with people in the community. I had a great chat with Greg a couple of weeks ago. We've also talked to most of the counselors one-on-one. We presented to the Economic Development Committee. So we had a little bit of a few conversations to give us some insights into what the biggest opportunities and challenges were to change. We're going to be keeping the community informed through the whole exercise. There's a project-specific webpage set up. We're going to follow this workshop with an online survey so that we can reach out to as many people as we can. And then we're going to come back to another big consultation event towards the end of the summer. And who knows, we might be able to be meeting face-to-face by then. So this is our study area to get everybody oriented. Hopefully you can find a location that you know of on the map. So I'm going to point to a few things. Here's the municipal office where my cursor is, the arena, the community center. So we're following Highway 118 all the way to the grocery store. So the precise boundaries, this red outline, it's going to be determined through the process. And we already heard when we had our session on Bala that there's interest in expanding that elastic to include more areas in Bala. So don't treat this necessarily as a hard line, but it's very much in flux right now. So it's about 1.25 kilometers along the highway. Here's the current official plan designations. Again, like I mentioned, the official plan is under review now, and I know they're going to be sharing the draft land use designations in the coming weeks. But right now, the red is core commercial. So here's the municipal building over here. So it's mostly core commercial, some mixed use, some highway commercial. So we're going to be looking at those current land use designations and understanding the changes that are coming about through the official plan review through this process. And one thing to point out, and I'm sure everybody on the call knows that this land where my cursor is labeled Indian River Reserve, and to our understanding, it's shared between the Chippewas of Rama First Nation and the Wata Mohawks. The zoning, so here's the study area again where my cursor is. Here's the municipal building just right here. So it's largely community commercial. And as we get through and into the next few weeks, we will be dissecting what the zoning allows, what you can and can't do in the study area. We wanted to start with a good solid understanding of the heritage attributes, features in the study area. And so we're mapping the sites that are designated in red and that are listed. And so you can see that there's a great framework of heritage attributes in the study area. And that's important to have a really solid understanding of, especially if we're going to be looking at opportunities for redevelopment in the study area. We took a minute to understand flooding and hazards. And so this kind of rust color is a floodway. The gold is the flood line. And again, this is a really important consideration in thinking about redevelopment and change. We did our own analysis of parking because it's always the first thing that we come to understand when we have a chance to talk to people. People never say there's way too much parking, takes them away. They always start with there's not enough parking. And so our first cut at this, when we look at it from looking at air photos and street level photography, is there's in the order of, let's just call that 300 spaces that are publicly owned and about 630 that are private. So they're parking that's attributed to specific businesses. You're going to hear through the process that I'm going to talk about a lot about how to balance the need of parking with maintaining the character and quality of a place that everybody talks about. We know that lots of people come to Port Carling by boat. So through our process, we're going to also be paying special attention to opportunities to incorporate additional boat parking spaces so we can get more people coming by boat and fewer people coming by car and needing parking spaces. We've mapped public and institutional uses because, as I mentioned in the beginning, a bundle of the initiatives through this exercise, municipal initiatives, will be looking at changes and improvements to publicly owned space. So, or it could be owned by the district or the township or the province. So whether it's parks or other municipally owned lands are owned by the district, we're going to be looking at those green spaces in particular. And institutional uses, the library, the municipal office, the community center, the Legion, the post office. The brown is mapping right-of-ways. And if you look closely at the gold area, where there is an existing road in that right-of-way, there's a white line, a white haze line. Where there is no white haze line, it's still municipally owned land, but there's no road in it. So those are locations, as Robin pointed out last couple of days, that we could be looking at for trail connections or something. So we want to make sure we know where those are, but not all of them have the road in it. To get yourself oriented to the distances, so let's look at this one on the right first. So this is a close-up. Here we are at the lock. There's the island. Here's the museum. So this is a bullseye, and everything within this yellow circle is generally a 5-minute walk. So you can see how accessible everything is in Port Carling. And on the one on the left, we've added the 10-minute walk that includes Hannah Park, the grocery store, the LCBO, the ice cream store, the information center, the core commercial area, the library, so everything within a 10-minute walk. We looked a little bit broader at a trail. So you'll see on this drawing, we've mapped the Hazelwood Trail in orange up here where my cursor is. And then we've mapped the Port Carling Mural Walk, the red. And then the Snowmobile Trail in yellow. So that's important for us to understand, especially if we're looking at changes, additions of parking or changes in access. We have taken the whole study area and we've taken a crack at identifying segments. These are not cast in stone. We can make these segments whatever makes sense as we go through the process. But for now, we've identified 4 general districts or segments. So the first one, we've just called Highway 118 West, then Medora Street in the middle here. Then the waterfront and the core commercial area, and then Joseph Street on the edge. So we do that just so we can look at focused areas and understand specifically the building character and form and open space system and parking and servicing and access in these specific segments. We know before 2020, there was a whole host of celebrations and activities and events that happened in Port Carling, and that the township has done a really great job at organizing events through most of the year. And so we're going to be making sure that through our exercise that whatever we do is not working against any opportunities to continue to have the celebrations and events. In 2006, there was a streetscape study done for Port Carling. These are the drawings that came out of that process. I believe there was a public process that was included in along the way of developing these sketches. This circle is a blow up here at the bridge. Here's the bridge. And in 2006, this was the diagram that they prepared to show change in Port Carling. And where my cursor is, this is redevelopment, maintaining parking, and behind shops and services where my cursor is. An idea of consolidating parking between Duke's and the Main Street stores. A lookout at the water's edge. So then we thought it was important to just remind ourselves and everybody that we talked to the changes that have occurred since 2009. So on the left is what it was like in 2009, and on the right in 2018. So here we are just coming up to the bend down the hill, the new sidewalk on the left side of this image. And at the core commercial area what it was like in 2009. And then in 2018, accessibility, ramps, retaining walls, organizing parking. A bit close to creating spaces for pedestrians on the street. The district has done some recent streetscape studies, and this is a diagram from the work being undertaken for the district by another consultant. It's called Paradigm. We wanted to include this diagram as the kinds of things that were being explored by Paradigm in their work for the district. So things like realigning Armstrong Point Road at this intersection, the intersection with 118, providing a municipal parking lot. Now it's really important to understand that this is privately owned. Hi, Greg on the phone. An idea about converting the on-street parking to a pedestrian area, and that would remove in the order of 13 spaces. Removing some of the on-street parking on the other side of 118, installing a pedestrian crossing, directing pedestrians to cross the bridge using the path. So we're going to be looking at this for sure when we make our team's recommendations for change in Port Carling. Our team's recommendations will come out of the process, like these workshops and other conversations we're going to be having over the next several weeks. So I learned this week that there's a feasibility study underway for the museum, which is terrific. And like I mentioned in the introduction, I know John Linton, who's managing that project very well. So we'll be keeping a close eye on the direction of that exercise. So the feasibility study, he said it's in the order of 12 weeks. It's going to be assessing the market, operating costs, possibilities for the design of the museum and the grounds. And he's working with an architect on his team. So it's going to be really important to work closely with them. As I mentioned in the beginning, I had some fantastic one-on-one conversations with people who own businesses, residents, most of the counselors. And I wanted to summarize the kinds of things I was hearing through those conversations. And we're building on this summary with the input that I'm getting in these workshops. So you'll see that on the material we're going to be posting to the project webpage. So I lumped what I heard into some of these categories. So there's a bunch of things about branding and marketing, where I heard it's going to be really important to make sure that Port Carling and Bala have distinct images and personalities, that people talked about ideas, things that are Instagram worthy, whether it's a big piece of public art. Well, the mural in Port Carling is certainly Instagram worthy, but other elements and features that could people would be attracted to and would push out on social media coming to Port Carling. We'll talked about other festivals like buskers in particular. Talked about having better information so that visitors know where to park, what businesses are in town, where the trails are, where the public spaces are. Talked about that it's difficult to walk in the winter, that we need a walking loop in Port Carling. Some of the sidewalks are missing. There's high speed on the street, need safe pedestrian crossings. They have to, both in Port Carling and Bala, that have to live with truck traffic, because unlike in other small centers like Huntsville, as an example, there may be alternate routes to take people, to take truck drivers off the main street and use other streets, but we don't have that in Port Carling or in Bala. People need to know where to park. I always hear that there's not enough parking. People don't want to lose parking. We have to give information about where to park. The need to make sure we're doing everything we can to get more capacity, to have boaters come in, have parking access for snowmobiles. Lots of interest in the grants and funding programs to help businesses expand or revitalize in Port Carling and in Bala. Great ideas for new businesses. I heard, especially in Port Carling, that most of the businesses are real estate or interior design businesses, and the people mentioned that within the context of wanting to have a greater variety of shops and services. Concerned about housing, no housing for staff, affordable, attainable housing. The idea about creating small gathering spaces, especially to expand uses in the off season. And what about things like Muskoka chairs around fire pits where there could be outdoor games and maybe a skating trail and anything to have attractions for everybody that lives in Port Carling, and in particular the youth. And then concern that there is not a lot of money to spend on anything, especially coming out of last year. Need to focus on bylaw enforcement. And like I mentioned, a lot of people interested in the grants and funding programs available. So I'll just ask Lauren to just walk through some of what we've learned so far.
Thanks, Donna. So Donna has spoken a lot about streetscape improvements, public realm improvements that will be considered as part of this. But we're also looking at the types of grant programs the municipalities have put in place to support local businesses, existing businesses, new businesses. And some of that has certainly addressed things like building improvement, property improvements. And in doing that, it's not just facades, but it's also looking at how to bring some buildings into compliance with the building code that might make them more adaptable to a broader range of uses as well. We've seen municipalities look at signage, housing rehabilitation, but also providing for attainable and affordable housing. And you can see here we've referenced both Bracebridge and Gravenhurst. And this is all as of 2019. And you can see the order of magnitude in terms of the uptake and the number of applications in each of the municipalities and the total grant funds that have been expended to this point. And what is really important, I think, is to see how much of the private sector investment has been leveraged for the public sector monies that have been provided. And you can see the ratios in both Bracebridge and Gravenhurst. These are numbers that have been provided by the municipalities themselves in terms of what they see for every dollar spent, the order of magnitude they get by way of new investment into the community. If you want to just flip to the next page, Donna.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. There we go.
Sorry. So there's a number of other municipalities that we're also looking at. We don't have a lot of detail on these as yet, but we will be looking at them. But suffice to say that municipalities in and around Port Carling have put CIP programs in place. Some of them are more progressive than others, certainly. Some of them are more standard when we look at facade improvements and signage improvements, et cetera. But I point out what Penetanguishene has done with respect to grants for affordable housing. And we'll want to be looking into just what they've done in Penetanguishene for the simple reason that we've already heard through the earlier workshop, but we're hearing this across most municipalities that we're working in is how CIPs can be used to support affordable and attainable housing, particularly for the workforce required to support some of your downtowns and core commercial areas. So I'll turn this back over to you, Donna.
Thanks, Lauren. Okay, I am going to end on this slide, but I'm going to ask Robin to share his screen, and he's going to, so I'm going to stop sharing and then turn it over to you, Robin, to get your screen loaded up. And I'm going to go down through the list of participants, and Robin's going to annotate the screen when you're talking about specific locations on the screen. And I'm going to go through my list of participants are in alphabetical order, kind of by their first name, more or less. So Robin, do you have the map up? Is everyone seeing? Lauren, can you just come on for a minute? And do you see that? Do you see Robin's map?
I do, yes.
Robin, you're up and going? Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So let's go down through my list. Well, for some reason, okay, I'm just gonna go. I have Greg. Greg, you're first on my list. Not sure.
Great. What does that mean?
There you go. And your mic is working. So happy to hear your thoughts on what can
Oh, thoughts.
Yeah, if you have any comments you want to share, or I can come back to you at the end if you want to.
No, I'm fine. I'll give you my vision to begin with.
Okay.
Which goes back to, I was part of when Land Inc. did their study 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was. It was a little unsettling. They did the study, did a lot of work before they talked to any property owners, which is not generally, if you don't have the people on side, you're not going to create anything.
I'm going to pause just for a second, Robin. If you could just put a yellow highlight area. Greg's site is to the east of the street of the word Maple, and it goes, more or less.
It's basically that whole block from the lock up to what was the fun store is now an antique store. Include the Boatworks Marina in this conversation as well.
So Greg, you were concerned with the work that was done earlier that.
Well, just they did an awful lot of work with consulting initially with property owners, which again, that's all, history now. To give you a little bit of background, some people on the call know me, others do not. We were the ones, my wife and I, that renovated the store where the mural is, which was the original IGA store. And we were instrumental in doing the mural, raising all the funds through a committee, all in the private sector with no government funding at all. So we have a pretty vested interest in Port Carling. We live in Port Carling as well. Our vision for the property, we understand parking's an issue. We have a major parking lot there that a lot of people think is a public parking lot. It really is a dust bowl in the summer, and it's just a totally unorganized parking lot. So in a nutshell, the history of that property, if we go back 100 and some years, it was the Polar Star Hotel that sat on that ridge, which became the Interlaken Hotel, which became the Port Carling House overlooking the locks. The Boatworks Marina is where I believe the Seabird boats were originally built. And down at the bottom of the hill by I'll call it the public docks and the freight shed or pavilion, there was a store called Whiting's Drug Store, which was an ice cream parlor. And I wasn't around at the time, but that's a little bit of history of it. Over the years, we've looked at all sorts of different thoughts and ideas of what we can do. And most recently, if I have to put it into sort of a dreamland of what we think could happen there, parking's extremely important, but parking is the ugliest thing to have in a downtown core, in my opinion. We're contemplating, and what we would like to do is possibly create a village within the village of Port Carling. So it will be appealing from the street, from the water. It would be a mixed use, which I'm not a planner, but I've read a lot of reports that a mixed use development is a better way to go than a single use development. We're looking at if we could, and again, this is all just preliminary, shave off part of the hill. The property crests in the middle and it's all rock. It then drops down towards the locks. if we were able to put in some, I'll call it subgrade parking, which would create more parking spaces and have the village atmosphere sitting on top of it. If you go to, if anybody's been to Blue Mountain Village, Mount Tremblant, any of the, I'll call them more ski resort areas, all parking is underground and you create a pedestrian friendly village. We've contemplated restoring the Boatworks property back to, look at, nothing's going to be the same as it was, and not an operating marina, more of a marina that pumps gas but isn't a repair shop. We're looking at the possibility of incorporating some condominiums in there, increasing the docking along the Boatworks property, along with retail / restaurant. Again, it's just a thought at this point. And in an ideal world, create some sort of a courtyard that is interior to the property, allowing for, as I saw buskers on there, something that makes it a very people friendly. And given the layout of the land, there could be you could be able to walk the entire perimeter of this property, as well as through this property, if it was planned right. We think it would be historic in nature to recreate Whiting's drugstore, not as a drugstore, but put the building back where it was. And a lot of people remember it. And as I say, I've only read about it, but try to add a little history back into it. But obviously in doing that, there would be numerous concessions that the township would have to make, because we basically putting Whiting's drugstore back, we're not going to meet any setback requirements, although it was there originally, and tearing down everything that's on the property now, not trying to, we've gone through the exercise of saying, well, what if we salvage the building along Lock Street? What if we salvage the ice cream store? The reality is those buildings they weren't exactly well built when they were built 25, 30, 40 years ago. And they're certainly not, they're not in keeping with, I'll say, a vision that anybody would have for Port Carling. So we're interested in doing something, but we really need the municipality and the residents of Port Carling and the.
You have a really big vision for change on that site, and you talk about some really great words like mixing uses and additional residential and making sure there's public access and additional docking. And you're at the very beginning of a big process that you're going to go through. That
I know.
And working in collaboration with the municipality. So that's good to know that there's some opportunity for change on that site. And through our exercise, through the community improvement plan, we'll be doing our own scribbles and scratches for change in Port Carling, and we'll be thinking about how things should be organized on that site. So it's good to know that you're thinking, you've got a big idea of that.
Oh, I've got more, but I won't bore everybody with that right now.
Okay, so let's
go on later, Lawton.
If we have time at the end, we're going to circle back to everybody too. And we've got a relatively small group, so we should be able to get through everybody. I'm going to ask Deb. Deb, do you want to talk a little bit about the tour boat?
Yeah, we've been operating that out of Port Carling now for, since 2012, I guess. And of course, as everybody's pointed out, the biggest issue is parking. And Greg's been very kind to offer his property. When we have guests inquiring where to park, we always direct them to the municipal parking lot and tell them it's a nice short walk down to the waterfront and a lovely, so it's to enhance all of that into the area for visitors to Port Carling. So whether it's signage to, make this more inviting, that kind of thing. Okay. Parking is a big factor. Mostly I'm just on the call to the waterfront, of course, is our biggest issue. Yeah. For boating and so forth. So I'm glad to see that that's part of the discussions with what you're proposing. And I'm quite excited with all the things that are on the table. So that's all I have at this point.
Maybe Robin, can you just put a little mark or an arrow or something where the tour boat currently sets up? Just, I'm sure everybody knows, but just so we
We're
have.
on both sides of the locks. We usually operate so many days on one side and so many days on
Okay.
the other side.
Okay. On the, yeah, okay. All right, so let's hear some other ideas. Then Nora, do you want to share some thoughts from the Chamber's perspective? And just to Greg's point, just before you start, Nora, to Greg's point about making sure businesses know this is going on between Cora and Nora and me, us, we're trying to reach out, do whatever we can to make sure all the business owners know that this is underway. And none of these benchmarks are hard, definitive deadlines. And so if everybody can spread the word that there's no time limit in anybody connecting with us to share their thoughts. So
that's really good to know. So the Chamber represents about 330 businesses across Muskogee Lakes, and 90 of those have Port Carling addresses, just for your information.
okay.
So there's a few things I'm not quite sure even where to start. You know what, I'm going to start with you know, the discussion in Bala. I got to sit in on that as well, but there's always been accessibility issues. We did the first impression exchange a few years back, and you know, and they talked about issues with accessibility and for, you know, people in wheelchairs and that sort of thing, and there have definitely been improvements. One thing that's been asked for consistently and yet never seems to show up is just some kind, not a crosswalk with lights, but a calming walk, you know, just where you actually show a crosswalk, especially as you look at Maple Street, like across from the building that Greg was talking about, which is now the Muskoka Emporium. We have people darting across there. So you've got people coming through the locks or just heading down the hill toward the locks. And it's amazing that nobody actually gets hit there. So I think that, you know, so even if it was just a calming, that people realize, oh, they see that there's a crosswalk mark there without having to put in lights. I think that would be really helpful. I'd love to see more cycling. Corey knows we talked a couple of years ago, the Rotary Club that I'm involved with offered to put in bike racks, and we were having a hard time trying to decide where to put those bike racks, possibly where we used to have a visitor information kiosk just for 1 year. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about the side of Lock Street on the small area of land before you walk up to the museum. And before I leave, I want to ask a little bit about where you got the information about people asking about more visitor information, because I want to make a comment on that. So cycling, there was the discussion about the boardwalk down at Steamboat Bay, and like trying to have it consistent, like right past the LCBO and everything. And the issues I believe Township ran into is that some of that was private property and they didn't necessarily want to link it all up. So I think there's a huge engagement exercise there, because it would be wonderful if you could walk the entire area, and whether you float out some more finger docks or something like that, that would be really good to have. The township, one of the first wins could be at the locks, and please correct me if a township person's on here, but those are district docks, but they were damaged or something last year. A crane fell into them or something. And we've got more than one tour boat now using that area. And the tour boats, like especially with Debbie Eccles, the Peerless 2, these are, it is considered the #1 attraction for Port Carling. It would be sad to lose those iconic attractions. So I think that I know the district was looking for, you know, some direction on, you know, how to deal with different boats coming into there, and how, you know, instead of making it harder for them, we should make it easier for them. And one of the first things we should do is really push to get those docks fixed, so we have more space for those boats, because they're really, really important to tourism for the area. Okay. Sorry that you caught that. The other thing I would mention is that, and it's been talked a lot, but I don't know whether they can be rebuilt or reworked, but we should make sure that in any community improvement plan, that any building must be built so it can be all year round. Mm-hmm. You know, this is, I know we want to talk about going forward, but at the same time, we have to make sure we don't repeat mistakes of the past. So if you talk about Turtle Jacks, or those restaurants that they're not insulated, they can't be used year round. And this year, it was something that was mentioned in the BALA conversation, was that even though we've been locked down, cottage rentals for just one company alone are up 1,000%. So we could have restaurants working in Port Carling all year round that people could go to. And we do have a couple. I'll do a shout out to Portside Fusion, and York and Mason is open sometimes, but again, we've had the lockdown, so it's been an issue. And just outside of town, we've got Richwells. But that has to, somehow there have to be incentives to make sure that we do build buildings that are all year round, that can run all year round. I mentioned this in Val, and I'm sorry to repeat, but right now the district is looking at a greenhouse gas emission project, and some of our chamber members that have actually taken steps to improve their greenhouse gas emissions. It might be as simple as making sure a door gets closed instead of opened, are saving a lot of money. So, and right now they're changing because of COVID, they're retooling their workspaces. So I know that this effort can't be that nimble, but the timing is really good to actually see some progress in that area. I think,
let me just,
sorry.
Corey, you had your mic on. I think you might have wanted to respond to something Nora was mentioning.
Oh no, yeah, it was just about the pavilion down at the locks there. It did get damaged last year, so I think the district is looking at some repairs there. So it was just, Nora just asked about clarification there. So.
Okay.
That's a beautiful pavilion. I hope the electricity I put in there is still in there. I hope it didn't get lost. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, so we talked about all year round, Steamboat Bay, areas for pop-up shops. You really need to speak with, and I'm sorry that he's not on this call, but Peter Quattro has Muskoka Hotel and Suites. And so just looking at this map, so that's right at the top of the hill, it's on Lake Ross. So yeah, you're close to it. And he's got property that he's really interested across the street from there. He's really interested in developing some open space, maybe some other heritage things, or where you could see people building on boats, or, he's interested in seeing that. He wants to know if there's grants or there's incentives or things for that. So, and both, I think Corey and the chamber, we work together in getting information about grants out, but often they open it, like one just opened and closed within 2 weeks. So you have to really be prepared and very nimble to move on those kinds of things. And so the final question I had was more because out of selfish interest, was you mentioned in one of the slides that you had some feedback that there was nowhere to get visitor information. Right. And so because of COVID last year, council decided not to proceed with an actual kiosk that was right at the locks, which drives a lot of people to the museum and to all the local stores and that sort of thing. We proposed a mobile tourism information service this year that would touch on Port Carling and other spots as well. And they decided not to fund that this year. So I'd really like to know a little bit more about where that information was coming from and that demand, because that would help us when we come back again, perhaps next year at budget time, to say that this still is an important need. People still are, we knew that from last year, that people were walking around Port Carling looking a little lost, and they needed that information and that guidance. That frontline in-person support is really important. So I'd really like to know a little bit more about that. So I think I talked about a variety of different things there. And then the last thing, well, cycling, as I said, I don't know what to do about that, but we really need to find a spot. And I think maybe even if we just put it where at the locks, that bike racks, that we could add some bike racks would be really good. But I mean, I know it has to be all part of a bigger plan. The discussion of pop-up shops, I know some of those are going to be happening. I'm not quite sure how at SWS this summer. Like, I don't know where will you park and that sort of thing. So, and we've often talked, the chamber, about maybe we should have a shuttle that runs between Ballot and Port Carling, so you can use both the town and the village or something like that. So so pop-up shops, even if it was on the Bartleman Island. And just to mention that one of your first slides doesn't mention the Ojibwe presence, which is really important to the history of the area. So we talk about the Chippewa, and we talk, so that's really important to add. The Ojibwe stories, and Mr. Bartleman would be upset that we're not covering that. So those are just a couple of things that I would throw out there, and just the importance of finding any way we can make it more attractive to bring in year-round businesses.
Yeah.
And the two big problems are housing and broadband.
Okay.
Thanks.
Certainly heard that from some of my interviews and conversations year-round businesses. Let me keep going. So Lawton, and then I'm going to go to Cindy, and then the library. I'll come to the library. So Lawton, do you want to go ahead?
For sure. I'm basically here as an observer.
Okay.
However, a bit of background. I've been a cottager here for 70 years, and I now live here full time for the last 10 years.
Okay.
A highlight when I was a boy was my father taking me to Port Carling in our boat and having an ice cream cone at Greg Magnion's Whiting's.
Hey, go for it, Lawton.
And walking up and down the wharf and seeing the product that the indigenous people had made over the winter time and were selling in the summertime. And that was a highlight of that. In regards to the Port Carling improvements, I understand there is interest in a pavilion on the island. And
Yep.
Pavilion, and the MLA is interested in looking at this further.
Oh, did we lose you, Lawton?
No, I'm still here. No.
Okay. So pavilion on the island, and the MLA is interested in.
And looking at it further.
Oh, okay.
Just
Okay.
heard about it 3 days ago. So
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And Cindy, before I go to Kathy at the library, Cindy. There you go.
Hi there.
Oh, hi, Cindy.
Hi, thank you all for all the information. It's been great. Thank you, Nora. I totally appreciated your input there, as I agree with quite a few of the things that you're pointing out. Bicycle racks would be awesome and might encourage more bicycle use, although I would be hard pressed to ride my bike through that parking area where people try and walk and can't, and nowhere to park. Yeah, my concerns are year-round businesses for
Yep.
sure. Also, I don't know if this is the right form or not, or if it's maybe more economic development. Maybe Corey, you can speak on it. If there's any kind of moratorium on how many realtors' offices there can be in one community, it's a bit of a, every new business that opens, it's a realtor's office. Kind of doesn't speak really well to a community feel if you live here year round, if it's all realtors. So I kind of like some information on that. I really like the idea of catering to full-time residents of this community, and the fact that there's children here, that there's young families in this community. And I know a lot of the economic development is geared towards cottagers and geared towards the tourism industry, which I understand is important dollars and the community needs. However, I would really like there to be way more focus on the fact that there is young families here and there are kids here, and that these kids need somewhere to go and something to do.
Yeah.
Besides just the rink. Hannah Park is an awesome park, and I know it gets a lot of use in the summer, which is great with the tourist crowd. So yeah, I would like lots of focus to be put more on the fact that there's a community here of people that want to be a community, and we're having a difficult time trying to, as a new resident of Port Carling in the last couple of years, trying to find where the community is. Where do we gather? There's a community center that sits empty from what I see for the most part. So I would really like to know where this community, the people who live here, where do they gather? Where do they commune? And more activities that are geared towards kids.
Okay. Yep.
I saw on one of the slides, and I just saw it briefly. I missed one of it, Donna, that you had put up there regarding a pickleball court.
Yeah.
If I can request a tennis court instead that we can make into a pickleball court, I would absolutely put my vote towards that. I see all kinds of space where there could be a tennis court, and I think it would be super well used, as well as kids, as well as long residents that live here year round. I know there's one in Milford Bay. It's shocking to me that there isn't one in Port Carling actually, because they're all private courts that I see around.
Okay, those are great suggestions. Maybe Corey, do you have any response to Cindy's question about a moratorium on real estate offices? Is there anything a municipality can do?
We definitely hear it, for sure. I don't think there's anything we can do to restrict certain businesses from kind of operating in commercial buildings. I think one thing we can do is through our economic development strategy, if we're focusing on investment attraction, we can definitely kind of target maybe certain sectors or certain kind of outlets that we think we're maybe missing in our downtown core. And we can look to maybe put our focus towards those areas more so than others. So
Yeah.
I would say, yeah.
Okay,
Good-
thank
that's
you.
good response.
But I'm really glad to hear kind of that family focus as well. And I think kind of providing activities from a year-round perspective for sure. So definitely important to make sure, yeah, we have that younger generation as well in focus.
Yeah, very good points. Let me get Kathy from the library. Hi, Kathy.
Hi. I have two or three things. I'm going to put two hats on, actually. One is for the library, and I'm also a Port Carling Lion. Speaking to Cindy about the activities for families and children, it's difficult right now in COVID. Normally, the library would be a bustling place for families, the community center, the arena. And so that's been difficult during COVID, and for new people in the community, I can certainly see where she would kind of wonder where is everybody and what are they doing. So we've always said that my family is here. We're here 8 generations. So I mean, there's lots happening, community groups and organizations, but that's non-COVID times. So. So there is hope, Cindy, when we get out of these COVID times, that you'll find lots to do in Port Carling. And by all means, please come to the library. You can get a library card right now, and we can help you out with outside pickup. So something else is the Port Carling Lions have kind of just started a conversation. We own a large piece of property out Ferndale Road, and we're kind of just starting a conversation about what we might do with that piece of property. There's a ball diamond there right now, and Muskoka Lake Soccer has played there, and they currently don't. But we're chatting about a water park, like a water pad for park, and pickleball courts and playground, and all kinds of dog park, maybe all kinds of.
And is that where the yellow arrow is that Robin just put on the map? Is that just the top edge of our map? The north?
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay.
Yeah. So that's nothing concrete, but just conversations starting.
Okay.
And the boardwalk that Greg was mentioning about Whiting's, I have memories of not vivid memories, but I do remember the little shops down there. I would certainly love to see that boardwalk come alive with the Whitings or the little shops or whatever. That was always a popular spot when people would come in the steamboats and board there. And it was, my mom chatted about that. That was the big event for them to go down and watch the boats come in and have an ice cream cone. So we've already chatted with Corey about bike racks. So to answer that question, the library will have a bike rack at some point. We've just installed an indoor water bottle refill station as well. So I understand water bottle refill stations are popping up in communities. It's difficult when we have winter to deal with. So I do understand about that. There's a maintenance problem there. My last thing, or second, two things, the connection between downtown and what we call Upper Port Carling. people kind of come to the bridge and they don't go any further, or
Yeah, I heard people talk about that as well. So that's where Robin is drawing the
and
line.
also trying to, I sat on the museum board, and it was always a struggle to get people to come up onto the island. So
Yeah.
it's always an issue.
Oh, to come across, to use the island as the way to get into the upper part. That's what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. And crosswalks, there was mention of one for downtown.
Yep.
There's a large public parking lot behind the library, but no way to safely get across the street. When you come up the driveway, then to go across the street, there is no public, whether it's a crosswalk or like Nora mentioned, just a slow down area.
Yeah.
So that people can cross safely.
Yeah. Okay.
That's about it for me.
Okay, thank you very much, because you do have a big chunk of parking in behind the library that's available for people. So it is important that we make sure it's easy for people to get there. I was just looking to see how many. Yeah, 53 spaces in that order. Okay. The museum. You want to, there you go.
There I am. Oh, that's the sun. Sorry. This is a great office space, and then the sun happens and I love it. I am super excited about everyone talking about using the island more. As Kathy just mentioned, one of the things is trying to get people onto the island in order to come down. And as we're working with the John and them from our consulting firm that we've just hired that's coinciding with this, that's one of the things that have come up.
Yeah.
Though I don't personally have any memories of Whittings, I do have lots of photographs of it. And one of the things that we've talked about is using the island space to kind of have outdoor exhibits or some like signs where you can take an old photograph and then compare it to what currently is there and have the lookout, and just ways to kind of create a historic walk, I want to say, but I'm not sure that that's what I want to call it right away. But coming into the island in order to increase excitement for our museum and for people wanting to come into the museum, but also to show the amazing history of Port Carling, of Whitings, and all the different advancements in that have been done with the locks and the township. I'm really excited about the possibility of, we're looking at the pavilion idea and getting that kind of, just using that park more, using that space more. Right now, the museum building itself isn't able to be used year round. But I would love to see that change in the future, or in the future have some kind of space that we can still kind of operate on, and maybe have like a winter exhibit outside, or like outside the museum building, like whether it's in a space that we rent briefly, but increasing that kind of year-round presence is really important to us. And you know, these two, our project as well as this project going forward, is going to really really kind of help us shape the next 5 years. We looked at trying to improve our internet speed, and that wasn't a thing that we could do. So the broadband is very very important. I'd love to see that whole island kind of become a Wi-Fi town hotspot for everybody, and the kind of fire pit and place, as long as the fire pit's far enough away from the log cabin. But just increasing that, and increasing water traffic, increasing the docks, and you know, just so people can kind of canoe there and have a recreational site, because it's a great park and it's a great space. And so I would love to see, you know, kids playing on it, a band and buskers at the pavilion for throughout the summer and festivals and that, and then those people happen to walk in and see the history of the region, and we'd really like to present that. So that's mostly what I've got to say on that.
That is really good to hear. And like I said in the beginning, we're going to be watching and monitoring what happens through the course of the next few weeks on the feasibility study, make sure we're working in tandem.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. Okay, a couple more people. I've got just about 10 after 4, so we've got time to get through everybody and then to loop back if we want to. So Anne and Harry, if you have anything you want to share. Keep an eye out for, there you go, your mic's on. And then I'll wrap with the last one I have on the list is Eric. So Anne and Harry, if you want to go first.
Yeah, well, I guess the things that, we've heard about are, that we're very interested in is, of course, the year round, because, we've moved up here and lived here full time for a number of years now.
Yeah.
I know there's a desire to encourage bicycles, but we don't, unless we put in space for bike lanes or something.
Yeah.
It can, that could be pretty dangerous with the boom trucks and everything going through town.
Yeah, yeah.
And certainly there needs to be some pedestrian crosswalks or something, because I mean, certainly in the summer when we have a lot of tourists and things and cottagers up here, it's, as Kathy mentioned, it's like trying to return a library book. If you can find anywhere to pull over,
right.
It's like taking your life in your hands, trying to cross the road to get to the apothecary shop or anything like that. And the year-round restaurants and the access and the dog park also resonates with us.
Okay.
And having some more, year-round things to do and places to go. I mean, we're in a position where we moved up here, and then both of our kids in their 20s ended up moving up here as well. So there is more of a community forming, and there are more people moving up here full time, as we've seen in the pandemic, although it's been kind of strange.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, also the parking thing.
Parking.
Is an issue. It's sort of like when we saw the real estate office across from the LCBO going up, I thought, oh, great, they're putting in a big parking lot. And then all of a sudden, oh, it's only for our clients. And the same thing with Jane's Cottages. The info center also used to be a place where you could, possibly park for a minute to run into the post office.
Yeah.
And that's gone too, because now it's only for Jane's Cottages,
Right.
So the parking is a big issue downtown, especially in the summer.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyways, that's all for us.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I have certainly come to understand parking as a real hot button, that's for sure. So we will be taking a bit of a deeper dive into our study area and see where there's any space to eke out some extra spaces. Eric, you are the last person on the list if there's things you want to share.
How to do this.
There you go. You're on.
Am I on?
Yeah, you're all good.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not very technically astute, and I don't have a computer here, so I'm doing this off my phone. Anyway, I'm Eric Lukes. Many of you know me. We've lived in Port Carling now for over 35 years at 95 Joseph Street, which is a heritage home that was built in 1924 by the boat builder, Billy Johnson. He actually started the economy in this town, and much is owed to Billy Johnson because he started the Dispro factory, then the Seabird factory and others. And the Bank of Nova Scotia actually came to town to service his boat building industry. Anyway, I'm a private citizen and I wanted to, I'm here on this site to promote the development of the island. Now I noticed that in your drawings, you've got the island is out of your red line zone, but notwithstanding that, we've been talking about building a pavilion on the island for years and years and years. And I think this would serve as a community gathering space for all kinds of activities. The museum needs it for sure, but it would help. It would be an extension of the community onto the island as a venue for other things like the boat show, concerts, festival gatherings, weddings, flea market. as well as gathering of a resting place for tourists and for boaters when they come to town. I'm sorry, my other phone is ringing. I hope it's not interrupting.
No, we can still hear you.
Anyway, I think this is an important development for the streetscape, and it would make a statement for this town. I don't mean just a little industrial pavilion. I think it needs to be a magnificent, stately pavilion that makes a statement for the town and would be a picture location, much like the Opera House in Australia. We need some central monument, let's say, for people to identify with Port Carling. And I think this is probably the most important improvement this committee could think about. There are a whole lot of other issues in town, and I know that we've spent a lot of time talking about parking. Well, you know what? There isn't going to be any more parking. There's no space to put it, and people come to town and they still manage to park. The boat show comes twice a year, the MLA boat show, and a gazillion people come to that boat show, and somehow they all manage to park someplace. And there's a lot of talk about crosswalks. Well, we can put a crosswalk in about 10 different places in town because the 18-wheelers come roaring through here. But somehow the people in town, tourists and the residents, have managed. I think if we have crosswalks all over the place, it's going to be a mess. So I think the pedestrians and traffic have managed over the years, and I think it's working. I have to wait to go across the road to go to the post office, but I recognize that it is what it is, and eventually I get across. And I don't think anybody's been run down to my knowledge over the period of time that we have resided in town. Anyway, that's much what I have to say. I do think that as a secondary thought is that I'm really pleased with the improvement of the streetscape on Medora. But when all that improvement was carried out, none of it was extended up here on Joseph Street. We don't have any of those nice street lights and other with hanging flowers and things like that, and stonework as has been done on Medora Street. I think that the businesses on Joseph Street are suffering on account of the lack of improvement on Joseph Street. And as an example, 2 restaurants that are in town here, which one was the former Ella's and one was the former Lobster Club. They've gone through 4 or 5 owners over the period of time because they just can't seem to make it. And I think this end of the street needs some help.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Always good to hear different perspectives on parking and pedestrian spaces. It's really important to hear the full spectrum of opinion on projects like this. So appreciate that, Eric. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It is just coming up on 4:20. We have a couple more minutes before I'd like to wrap up. Does anybody on the call want anything else to share? Nora, I see your mic is on. Do you have, and Greg, I see your mic is on too. Nora, do you want to go first? Then I'll come over to you.
Sure, Greg. I'm considering what to say. I'm actually not sure from this map, and I think Kathy alluded to it, but the ballpark off, is it Foreman Road or Ferndale Road? Sorry, is that within the CIP?
It is not, but I mentioned in the beginning that through this process, we're going to define the limits. We're going to make adjustments to this red line that circles our study area. So the point that was just made about the island, that's an interesting perspective. Should that be included? And so we can also talk to our township team about whether it makes sense to go
Because I'm thinking, I mean, there's a space where we could do pop-up shops, we could have festivals, we could do things there where the ball diamond is. And it just looks to me like it's, you know, oh, I see the line just went where it would be, I guess. So, yeah, no, that I just, it was something that Kathy Duck said that made me twig to that these are the kinds of things we can cover, just like, you know, covering Jaspin Park in the Bala one. So that's good. And I was just going to add to, and I forget who mentioned it, but something Corey and I, that the township we've wrestled with for ages, is once people go over the bridge, getting them up the hill to Portside Fusion, to stores like Bridgeport and others. And Corey's tried signage. He's really worked hard on that. So again, it's just something that we really need to put our collective heads together and try to make sure that there is information or encouragement in some way to go up the hill and see what else is there and visit the library and that sort of thing. So that would be sort of my last 2 cents. I think, you know, Park Carling's an interesting nut to crack. So there's a lot of seasonal influence on what happens in the area. But if we want to, you know, accomplish some of the things that we're talking about here, we have to really put our heads together and figure out how to do that. So I applaud you bringing this back once again, because we have gone over this, you know, several times before, but going forward, let's see what we can do. And if there's any way that the chamber can further engage people, we actually don't have a lot of members right on the Steamboat Bay because they are so seasonal. They come in for the 8 weeks and they're gone. And it's also makes it really difficult for someone like Corey to even connect with them for the rest of the season. So there's got to be a better way. Anyway, thank you very much for your time today.
Greg, did you have other ideas?
Yeah, just a few comments. I think everything that's been brought forward, I think, is all great. It's somewhat of a chicken and egg. Business can't survive without people, and we need to bring more people into town. And obviously, there needs to be somewhere for them to live. The number of calls I've had over the years of people that want to open full-time businesses in Port Carling, from restaurants to retail. They say, well, but I can't make any money all winter. I think it would be very easy to turn Port Carling into at least an 8 or 9 month season. It's like everywhere else, you're going to have 2 or 3 months that business just will not survive. I think the history of Port Carling is there. We just need to bring it back. And that's why we're thinking the way we are right now, that let's get rid of the surface parking and create more parking, more docks, all of which we can do from our property to satisfy some of those needs. But the mixed use to me is the most critical component of what we're thinking about, because if you've got the people, the other businesses will do well.
Yep.
And it will then enhance. And having numerous businesses in Port Carling over the years, and my office overlooking the locks for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, whatever it was, the general population is lazy. They get to the bridge, they do not cross the bridge. And I've watched families walk down, they turn around and go the other way. They'll go up over the hill down towards, I'll call it the Blue Box, the Turtle Jacks development. They won't walk up the hill the other way. So I think there's a fundamental issue there. But if walking trails could be encouraged and developed into some of these properties, I think we're onto something. I think the Island Park is a phenomenal opportunity to create the locks. There was a time when the Seguin and Winona, when they first launched the Winona, they wanted to keep one of the ships in Port Carling full time. The council at the time, no disrespect to the politicians, their comment back to me was, Greg, that'll bring so many people, it'll just be too crowded in town. And they were estimating they would bring 10,000 visitors per year once they were up and running. And for the cost of running the sewer line down to the pavilion on the Rosso side, the navigation company said, forget it, we're out of here. And now they just pass through. So it's those things that are, important. And so we all need some help in all of this. And
thanks for that, Greg. so we've had a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate all of the comments that people have given us, the conversation, the ideas. Before I wrap it up completely on everybody's behalf, Corey, do you want to just remind everybody where to find information? Thanks.
Sure, yeah, definitely. And I want to take the time again to thank everyone. I appreciate everyone attending today, sharing their input. I think I've taken a lot of notes. I think a lot was covered, a lot of great ideas. As Don had stated, so we do have a project page. It's on engagemuskokalakes.ca. And I encourage everyone to register and sign up there. You can also subscribe to receive updates. We'll send email notifications right to you throughout the process of this project, kind of next steps, next stages. And yeah, thank you again. And we look forward to kind of collecting all the data. And I think, Donna, I don't know if you're going to touch on, but the next step is a community survey to receive some further input. But in the survey itself, provide some more kind of idea-based visuals of what to get an insight, I guess, of kind of what people maybe would prefer in specific locations. So I look forward to that, and I hope everyone else, yeah, subscribes to the page so that they can complete the survey when it's available. Thanks, Donna.
Donna, could I just ask one last question?
Sure, Greg.
So just let's fast forward, and the planning partnership is finished. They've left town. What happens when Land Inc. left town? Everything absolutely came to a grinding halt. Nothing was done. And the municipality had spent in excess of $500,000 on that. And everything just, a few signs might have gone up, a few planters, but just where does it go when the planning partnership goes home?
I can answer that, I guess, a bit. I think a lot of it will stay with me in the Development Services Department, Greg. I think
Okay.
In that prior plan, we didn't have anyone in economic development. And I think now that I am in that position with the township, the CIP is definitely, one of those tools that we can use to help grow the local economy. I think one thing we didn't touch on too much in this Port Carling discussion, but is the potential for those incentive programs for the private sector. And through this, we'll be able to identify which ones may have a bigger impact on our specific area. And if council moves forward with the approval of the plan and dedicates to providing some funding each year, I think through that program, you'll see me kind of involved and helping kind of provide some private sector local businesses with the opportunity to redevelop their properties. So
Okay, no, that I
you
appreciate
can
it. I wasn't
keep in touch with me. Yeah, I'll
I
definitely.
wasn't trying to be critical. I just
No.
want things come and go before, and
Yeah.
if the ball gets dropped or
Yep.
not passed
No,
on.
it was brought up in our discussion in the BALA session as well. Kind of what's the path forward after this, right? I think there's definitely kind of the public realm projects or priority areas that we may identify, the museum and that. And I think my vision from the township's perspective is if we at least have those projects identified, then when funding opportunities come about from the province or federally, we have our plan in place, we're ready to apply for them, right? So this is kind of that first step.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So as Corey said, we've got tons of notes. I've been scribbling away. I know Robin has, and Lauren and Corey, and we've heard lots of information about new development. Thank you very much, Greg, and opportunities to help the tour boat and accessibility and crosswalks. And then others like Eric said, no, the accessibility and the crosswalks are just fine. We've heard about more parking, and then we've heard about, no, we can't fit any more parking in. And this is absolutely what we would expect on a project like this, that we hear the full spectrum of opinion. I've heard about year-round businesses in both sessions, about the needs for young families. So it's been really, really helpful. We're going to be doing a summary of what we heard and posting it to that project webpage that Corey mentioned. So keep an eye on that webpage. And as we mentioned, the recordings for both sessions will also be posted there. So please share it with your friends and family and spread the word about the community improvement plan. So with that, I really want to thank everybody for carving out a bit of time. This afternoon, we would way rather be meeting face to face, and hopefully we can do that before the project wraps up in the fall. So thanks again. Keep in touch with us, and look forward to having another conversation soon. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
So you can end the recording, Robin. Thank you.